Delegates, ladies and gentlemen, as you know, across Ireland today we have what is undoubtedly one of the worst housing crises in decades. Home building has grounded to a halt. Rents, as we heard from those who gave our motions, are soaring in Dublin and in other cities. And we met as a parliamentary party with Simon Community last week. The person who works on their behalf in Dublin confirmed to us the figures that had been released earlier that day. Say 1,000 children are living in emergency accommodation across Dublin today. That's not a national crisis, that's a national scandal. He also relayed the fact to us that when he spoke to housing officials in Dublin City Council and he looked across the table at them, he could see the fear in the white of their eyes as they tremble with the thought as to how they might deal with this terrible calamitous situation that has arisen, as it been allowed to arise by virtue of the inaction on the part of the present government. Delegates, 90,000 people are languishing on waiting lists throughout the country. And that's not just 90,000 people. That's individuals, that's partner with their partners, with their families. It could be up to 200,000 people. First-time buyers are frozen out of the market, as Michael McGrath has said. And when you wonder why that is the case, you think back to Ministers Noonan and Gilmore and Taoiseach Kenny when they came from a summit and said that there would be bank recapitalisation for this country, retrospective bank recapitalisation. But during the Christmas holidays, it was slipped in by Minister Noonan that that had been abandoned and AIB would be for sale. It would be for sale and it would make a profit and realise a good price. At whose cost would it make a profit? At whose cost would it charge 2% over and above the European average? Those that have been crippled for the last 2 years under the insolvency legislation that this government brought forward, those are the people who will make the profits for Michael Noonan and his government at the expense of them very selves. And then you have people in their own areas, unfortunately, who can't get permission in rural Ireland. All the while, builders and construction workers who worked on many sites have either emigrated or remain unemployed, ready for work but unable to find it. And in response, this government has been all about the tip, but very little about the iceberg. Ministers Kelly and Coffey are like two bald men fighting for a comb in a rush to announce houses that just simply don't exist. We accept, as a parliamentary party, as an organisation, and you, the membership, accept, we have to learn from the past. We have to learn from the mistakes of the past. But we have to learn from the success of the past too. It's time for a new vision. There can be no more, as was said earlier, boom and bust construction. What we need is the right homes in the right places and a planning system that sustains it. So in response to that, and on behalf of the Fianna Fáil organisation and its members, and following consultation with those same members, and with the councillors, 267 of them throughout the country, whom are at the coalface, and in no small measure as a result of the consultations we have on a weekly and daily basis with those we have the privilege to represent, 40% of my representations are in the areas of housing. And I have no doubt that that's the case for our councillors and our fellow TDs and senators also. But you can be sure that there's 40% or more making the same representations to government party members and government TDs, but there's been no response, as I said earlier. Nothing only the road is under construction, but it's the road to nowhere because it's under construction for the last 4 years. Our housing roadmap will transform home building in Ireland and secure home ownership for a generation. And at the heart of this, at the heart of it, the concept is that owning your own home is good for families and it's better for communities. Our four-step roadmap will build 150,000 new homes. We will support 80,000 first-time buyers. We will create 80,000 jobs. and we will empower 20,000 local authority tenants the opportunity to purchase their home. And of course, we will seek to secure homes for the elderly, that they remain in their community and play an active role in participation in community life. The first step on that, of those four, we have to get Ireland building again, and there is no shame whatsoever in that. The lack of home building is killing the dream of home ownership. And our first step is simple. It's bricks and mortar. It's committing to build those 150,000 homes with a twin track in relation to the public sector and the private sector. And in order to achieve that ambition, we will direct that the Strategic Investment Fund starts providing finance directly to private developers who cannot at all access credit from the present banks, the pillar banks and the whole lot of them put together. So we will put that in place to ensure that happens. We will change the role of the Strategic Banking Corporation to a home development bank to get it lending to builders and help them to get foundations laid also. We will strengthen the rights of local people to build and own a home in their own local area in rural Ireland. We will allow for residential development in the vacant commercial properties that exist and are scattered throughout the towns and villages throughout our country, in order to reinvigorate those towns, revitalise them and repopulate them, together with the Streets Ahead document we produced last year. Secondly, in order to tackle the social housing and homelessness crisis that we mentioned in Dublin and across the country, we will commit to build 45,000 new social housing units. We will introduce a new €4.5 billion direct home building programme for urban and rural Ireland. We will keep Part 5 in full, because we believe it has the capacity to derive 12,000 housing units. And we acknowledge that the concept of cash in lieu did not succeed and cannot be repeated, and we will ensure that that is not the case, and that these builders play their part, play their role in ensuring that communities are revitalised again. We will help to develop housing associations' finance to ensure that they can access private funding as well as public funding, to allow them to get building, and together with the local authorities they can create up to 30,000 units over the lifespan of this plan. This government has failed miserably to deliver the social dividend that NAMA was to have given to the state. We will make NAMA deliver on that goal. We will ensure that by directing specific targeted teams within each local authority to ensure that there is a dividend for that specific local authority. Thirdly, as I said, we believe that owning your own home and having a place to call your own, and having a place to raise your family, is something every worker should aspire to achieve. And I can assure you we will be the only party committed to building homes in that fashion, and we will actively help people to buy them. And as part of our third step, we will introduce a first-time buyers savings scheme to help 80,000 families, help them starting out get the money together for a deposit on their new home. And for every €200 saved, the government will add 50 to help meet that deposit. It will be capped at 4 years. It will be capped at 4 years. It will have a 5,000 per individual, 10,000 for couples. We have seen under Charlie McCreevy the success of the Special Savings Initiative some years ago, and we want to target a similar scheme such as that to get houses built, to get people into their homes and to sustain and develop communities. Ladies and gentlemen, we will also, from the capital generated within that fund, target 2,000 homes, starter homes at reduced prices, towards the Dublin market, because that is where the crisis exists at present, and that is where we have to respond to the fears that are in the agencies that tells us you can see the white in the eyes of the people whom this government is supposed to direct to provide solutions for that situation. We will also shake up the mortgage market, and it needs some shaking up, I can tell you, as you heard from Michael McGrath. We will encourage and provide legislation to allow the credit union into that market, along the lines of the Canadian model, where it has been very successful, and we think that is the sort of shake-up the market needs to encourage banks into the competitive market to allow people to succeed thereafter. And as Michael McGrath said, in relation to those that are struggling to maintain their own home, who are in great difficulty, who have been under massive strain this last 2 years, we will remove the bank veto on debt deals. Read my lips, Michael Noonan. We will remove it. If you won't, we will. Aspiring to own your own home is not the remit of just the private sector, as I've said. There are many local authority tenants throughout the country who would have that same aspiration and are entitled to have it. And to that end, Fianna Fáil will launch a new right-to-buy local authority purchase scheme right across the country. The basic tenant purchase scheme will be rolled out at a 3% discount on the valuation of the property per annum up to a maximum of 10 years. Additional income level criteria may also be agreed with various local authorities, where low-income households will be eligible for total discounts of up to 40 to 60%. The money generated from within that fund will be reinvested by the local authorities in which it is collected. That is active participation by local authorities, by councillors who we put into positions to do so, and we commend them for that. Our fourth step is to ensure that our elderly live independently in their own homes for as long as they wish. We will fully reinstate the housing adaptation grants and link the Fair Deal scheme to it in order for them to have the choice, for their families to have the choice to make their homes adaptable to meet medical needs that may arise during later years. And when you think that's what active participation is, that's not costing the state the millions upon millions that nursing home care and long-stay hospital care is causing, and the problems that's causing for others who wish to access those very same services. We will also give them the choice, those whom reach retirement or beyond, in order to make available to people to trade up so as they can trade down. And in doing so, we will reward them if they wish to take advantage of that, by virtue of the fact that there will be no stamp duty when they buy the new home. And we will ensure, having done that also, that there will be no property tax on that same new home for 5 years thereafter. That's the sort of commitment, that's the sort of active participation we want in communities. We want the elderly to play their part as much as the youth, and we always have looked after that sector. We will continue to do so, and let nobody tell you any different, that's for sure. So across those four steps, Fianna Fáil will build more homes, create more jobs, help more first-time buyers, empower more local authority tenants, and secure more elderly people in their homes than any other party. Ladies and gentlemen, Minister Kelly appears to count his legacy in the number of press releases he sends out, and we know how obsessed he is with his legacy. We count our legacy, and we will count our legacy, on the number of families that we ensure have a safe and secure home. I'll tell you something about legacy. In the county in which I reside, half of an existing constituency and soon to be one in Offaly, how many homes have been built under this government's stewardship? None. 8 are under construction in a place called Banagher. Well, that baits Banagher, doesn't it? In my office there are 70 applicants for house adaptation grants. Elderly people, some unfortunately disabled. Unfortunately, the local authority has to pass on the message to them that they can't be considered for grant aid for 3 to 5 years. The one-off cost of addressing that issue at roughly €15,000 a unit is €1 million. The cost to the state, should those people unfortunately not, as a result of the loss of this, be able to reside in their own homes or adapt their own homes, and the costs associated with long-term stay in the hospitals, costs associated with medical care, nursing homes and so forth, amounts to the guts of 15 or 16 million. And when we say, why aren't you building homes, they say, oh, it's because of you crowd that went before us. There's nothing there. You blew it, you burst the boom, all this mantra. 4 years later, by the way. They have wasted 15 million in that instance. And that's one county. We have many more counties, many more local authorities throughout the country. Do the maths yourself. But it's more than likely, unfortunately, many of those people, unfortunately, might even have passed away by the time they might be approved. And you know what? They took the death grant. They can't die with dignity either, no more than living with dignity. That's the sort of legacy these guys are presiding over. That's the legacy they're presiding. And when I see that exposed for what it is, and see it on the ground, and deal with those people, and empathise with them, I think of 4 years ago. You see the scene, Pat Carey and Pat Rabbitte. And Pat Rabbitte said to him, and he was very opportunistic in the way he said it, the time he said it, he said, "You should hang your head in shame." Well, Pat Carey, if you're out there, if you're at home or wherever you are, it's time to return the compliment to Pat Rabbitte and the Labour Party and all this government stands for. Delegates, I thank you for your time. I thank you for your consultation, for the manner in which, as Michael has said, the organs of the organisation relayed their fears, their worries, relayed their ideas, their suggestions, together with the councillors, and has resulted in this document. And I commend it to this Ard Fheis and seek your approval to publicise it and to engage with the public over the next number of months, and allow them to see that our party, our Republican Party that is Fianna Fáil, is the party of solutions, is the party with policies across a wide range of areas. It's not like the renewals that are only set up having fallen out with Fine Gael. It's not like Sinn Féin, as we said, that want to divide communities. And it's most definitely not like the opportunist that is the Independent Alliance. I commend it to you, the floor. Thank you.
Cowen, Fianna Fáil spokesperson on the environment, making a series of proposals aimed at providing more housing by both the public and private sector. And as you can see, there's a very warm reaction from delegates here at the Fianna Fáil Ard Fheis.